Kia ora no e ngā pautaikura huri noa, you're watching our House of Business. He whare Pākehī ko Anthony Roll taku ingoa. Ka tahi te tangata pare I te huarahi umanga ko tēnei, ko Roanne Parker taku manuhiri mutunga mo te rā. At the turn of the century, she was one of the first Kiwi business people to cash in on the shift from DIY to DIFM, or in other words, do it for me. Tēnā koe, Roanne.
Kia ora.
Thanks for coming along. Hire A Hubby.
Yep.
Now, I understand it started in Australia and you brought it to New Zealand.
Yeah, it did. It was a great story. A guy was really down on his luck. He had 3 kids under 3. His house burnt down twice in a year. He actually had 2 kids in 1 year. He had like one born in January, one born in December, and his wife was desperate to get him out of the house and
that's a
earn
good
some
story
money.
so far.
So she like literally hand wrote a whole lot of notes saying, "Please hire my hubby," and went around the neighbourhood and stuck them in letterboxes. And the response was overwhelming. So she got rid of her husband. That was all good. He was out.
He was out working.
He was out working, yeah, and they managed to sell a few franchises. But we were living in Australia at the time. We were both Kiwis, and we had 3 kids there. My son was about 7, and he was right into the footy in Australia, and he had such a strong accent. I thought we better get home soon before it's too late.
His accent changes forever.
Exactly. So we thought we would come back to New Zealand, and rather than come back without a job, yeah, we looked around for something that we thought would work well, and Hire A Hubby sounded like a great idea.
Yeah, so what attracted you? You know, when you made up your mind to go and take the franchise to New Zealand, what sort of things you checked out? What did you need to think about?
To be honest, it was really poorly developed. At that point, they didn't have much more than a kind of a literally hand-drawn logo. They had a concept that they had these guys in pink shirts, which was a bit of a Mickey take, really. And they had a pink trailer, which was obviously clearly visible when it was parked on the street, which I thought was a good idea.
Which is part of the
marketing. But I mean,
yeah.
the thing that attracted me is, like, I was a wife. Actually, I was. I'm not now. But I was a wife. I had kids at home. My husband worked all the time, and I had all these little bits and pieces that always needed doing. So the concept of Hire A Hubby is that rather than calling a builder and then calling a plumber and calling a gardener and so on, when you've got a whole lot of bits and pieces to do, call one guy. He'll come round. He'll like stick the tiles back on the wall, put the handle back on the door, you know, put the letterbox up, put up the heated towel rail, and it's really difficult to get those kind of jobs done.
So he generally did all the DIY kind of jobs.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, how difficult do you think? Well, yes, you probably know how difficult it was to actually get established.
Oh, it was so funny. We had a friend who still has an office in Anzac Ave down in Auckland, and we just got a back room there, stuck a phone in. Kind of thought, oh my God, wouldn't it be good if it rang?
Okay, we've started a business
now. Exactly,
yeah,
here we are. And, you know, I tried to be a bit innovative and, you know, because we had no money, so we had to kind of do some guerrilla marketing. So I ran around in town and tried to kind of build the name, and it was really interesting how we got the first lot of publicity. And at that point, we didn't even have a car, we didn't have any franchisees or anything. We saw that there was a lady who was advertising in Hawke's Bay. You can cut this, I know it's quite long. We saw a lady who was advertising in Hawke's Bay, Rent My Hubby, and we rang her up and said, hey, you can't do that, mate. You know, we've got the trademark for New Zealand. So she had to put a little ad in the public notices saying, you know, saying basically that she wouldn't operate anymore and Hire A Hubby would. And a reporter from the Dominion saw that and rang us, and she thought that we were running a brothel. She was like, oh my God, this is a great story. So it turned out it wasn't, but she still kind of gave us a half page on the front page of the Dominion. And that came out that morning. Then Breakfast TV rang. They obviously saw it. They're scouring the papers for news. They called us at like 6 a.m. and said, can you come in and tell us all about this? Then we were on Breakfast. I guess it was One News came down to the green room at Breakfast and said, you know, we want to go out with you and see what it is that you do. Now, at that point, we had no cars, no franchises, like no customers, nothing. So we had to run around all day just mocking everything up. Like I got a mate, we went round to my sister-in-law's, pretended that we were a big business and we weren't. And then the phone started ringing.
Well, that's a brilliant example of guerrilla marketing. Didn't cost you much at all, did it?
Nothing.
But from there you developed it. So
Yeah.
what was the process for getting all of your franchises up and running?
Yeah, the first thing that we did actually is, I'm kind of taking the mickey a little bit, but we did spend a lot of money on the agreements, making sure we had like the right legal agreements. We had an accountant who was really good. We went to Ernst & Young straight away and got great accounting advice. So we had all of that ducks in a row. Training was critical because if a guy hung a dryer up and then it fell off and landed on an old lady, that's probably bad for the brand. So we had to sort that training out. And
so you had all the marketing, you had the systems to build,
Yeah.
you had all the accounting systems to build.
Yeah.
And how big did it grow while you were looking after it?
We grew from nothing, from that little office in Anzac Ave to our own building, and we ended up with 65 franchises when we sold it about 18 months later. Yeah.
Fabulous. 18 months, 65 franchises.
Yeah.
That's fabulous.
Yeah.
And you sold it. Now,
Yeah.
tell me about the process of selling it, because we've talked a little bit on the program about buying franchises, but of course there comes a time when people want to sell it.
The sales process was fascinating to go through because we sold to a company called Fletcher Building, which is a rather large New Zealand company. So we went through quite a full mergers and acquisitions process, and it was really interesting.
Why were they interested? Just out of interest?
Well, as you introduced this piece, they banked on the fact that Kiwis were less DIY and more into this new sector called DIFM. So they thought that.
So they thought they were going to grow that business.
Yeah, they were going to put kiosks in the stores, and when you bought a heated tail rail, you could kind of book to get it installed into placemakers. Yeah, that was their idea. Yeah.
And so the process of selling, how long did that take?
We started our relationship with placemakers from day one. We bought all the guys' gear from there, and we kind of nurtured that relationship quite strongly. The good thing about placemakers is it was national, like we were going to be, and ended up being.
Was that a deliberate strategy?
Yeah, it was actually. Yeah. We worked pretty hard to make sure that we had good alliances right from day one. And I mean, another thing that we did, which was a big thing, was we pitched an idea to Maggie's Garden Show, which was, we're going back 10 years, but it was a big show in New Zealand, and Maggie was really credible. So we called them and said, hey, we think this is a really cool idea for a makeover. And, going back, this is hard to believe now because we've been drowning in this stuff for 10 years, but there was no such thing. So we pitched the idea for a makeover segment where the guys would go in and, transform a garden.
Last question.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, last question.
No.
What advice would you give to somebody who's looking at either buying or selling a franchise?
I'd say definitely do your homework, and I know that's probably a bit of a cliche, but make sure those systems are in place. Make sure they're doing a better job than you could do on your own, because a lot of times I think you buy into a system, you buy into the restrictions as well as the the bad stuff as well as the good stuff. So yeah, make sure that
get in there with your
job.
eyes open.
Yeah, definitely.
Kia ora, Roanne. That's a fabulous story. Thanks very much for coming along and sharing that. Hoi anō rā, kua mutu taku patupātai i taku manuhiri mo tēnei rā, e manako anau, ka hoki mai koe a tērā wiki, when we'll talk more about the ways and means of doing business. Mehe mea he paki tāhau, e mōhio rānei ana koe, ki e tētahi atu kaipakihi, feel free to contact us at e wharipakihi@maoritelevision.com. Hei konara, i te iwi.